It's the SKOR North Twins Show.
Reckless speculation.
That's right. Judd surfing his reckless speculation feed on Twitter right now, looking for Jim Bowden tweets, looking for John
Bowden.
Heyman, Jeff
Yep.
Passan,
Passenbaum.
Duquette.
Passenbaum.
It's all over. It's all over. Something's going to happen big, right?
Well, there's tons of trades happening right now. We'll get into some of this, and there's just another credible national report to the pile of, the Twins are bleeding out of their pockets financially. They can't possibly afford. So we'll get into that. It's our State of the Twins Monday here on the SKOR North Twins Show. But two quick announcements or reminders, starting with this one. Tomorrow night at Park Tavern in St. Louis Park, we are holding a SKOR North Twins Show trade deadline watch party. So whatever happens in the next day and a half or whatever, we will be there to talk about it. So 4 o'clock at Park Tavern in St. Louis Park. 5 o'clock is when the trade deadline hits. And then 6 o'clock, all the TVs are going to be on Twins Mets. So if you haven't been able to watch a Twins game on TV in a few months, you can come hang out at Park Tavern. We'll have some fun giveaways. So it's the Twins Show trade deadline watch party at the official sports bar of the Sports Dad, Park Tavern in St. Louis Park.
Yeah, it's going to be a great time. We're going to cheer some beers, talk some baseball, talk some Vikings, perhaps, and then watch a Twins game, because who wouldn't like to watch a Twins game after months, at least for us Comcast guys, of not being able to. Also, Park Tavern, if you are going to have an event, a birthday party, I don't know, a company event, if it's a big one, Park Tavern, they can handle anything. So parktavern.net, check them out, but make sure that your next event is at Park Tavern, because I assure you it'll be a good time.
Yeah. Also, today is the first day of our week-long SKOR North Power of Sports auction, the second annual Power of Sports auction benefiting the Courage Kenny Rehabilitation Institute. All week long at skornorth.com/auction. We have several great experiences available to buy or bid on. Our goal is to raise $15,000 this week for Courage Kenny, which works with children and adults who experience life-altering injuries and disabilities. They offer a full range of innovative rehab therapy, physical, occupational, speech to help people get back on track as much as possible. In 2023, 500 plus athletes participated in adaptive sports and recreation programs at Courage Kenny. And so all week long, skornorth.com/auction. For instance, there's a buy it now item up right now, executive balcony tickets to the September 11th Twins game. Hang out with us, watch some playoff stretch baseball. Also, VIP suite tickets to see Aerosmith at the X for their farewell tour. Hang out with me. I'm a big Aerosmith fan. And all sorts of other things you can buy or bid on at skornorth.com/auction. There's also, the Champions Club experience that you can get your hands on. So, yes, and thank you in advance for helping us raise money for a great cause. skornorth.com/auction. So, boys, here is our State of the Twins just overview.
Baseball.
As we do every Monday on the show. 58-46 is the record. Another series victory over the Tigers. Second place in the division, just 4.5 games behind the Guardians. 6th in runs scored per game. 17th in runs allowed per game. A 79% chance to make the playoffs, according to Baseball Reference. And a 6% chance to win the World Series. We're going to wipe out the vibes category right now and replace it with some of the reports that are coming out here. Again, just a day and a half before the trade deadline. And I'll give you the latest here. Bob Nightingale from USA Today says the Minnesota Twins, who cut their payroll by about $30 million this year, are hamstrung in their pursuit of trade acquisitions unless they're able to dump a contract. So Bob Nightingale, Jeff Passan, and Mark Feinsand, all top National Baseball insiders, have all reported the same thing in the last 5 days, which are the Twins cannot add really any significant money unless they dump a Christian Vazquez contract, a Max Kepler contract. What are your guys' thoughts on the eve before the trade deadline?
Go ahead, Dex.
It's frustrating. And we kind of knew some of this stuff over the last week, but it's just manifesting and it's being told. It's weird that other insiders are just kind of doubling down and reporting on it more and more, because does this hurt the Twins' chances of trying to make a deal happen? Like, I'm just trying to also understand why more and more reporters are and I'm not like trying to suggest that like, why are you reporting this? Because it's absolutely news. It's a competing team that has aspirations of being a playoff team and trying to still catch Cleveland. But also, like, are they striking out on almost every proposed deal because everything that comes back to them says we literally can't make that happen because it's $5 million over budget? Like, that's where I'm trying to figure out where all this weird stuff kind of blends together. In my least favorite category, I'll give you maybe a bigger take on this too, but right now I'm still trying to like piece together why all this stuff is coming out now. Over the last few days.
Why don't we just call this this is our least favorite thing category discussion. So any and all things to do with Twins potentially won't make a trade because of financial reasons. I say let's dump it into this category off the top of the show.
So my least favorite thing is there is this weird contingency of Twins fans and sports fans, and I got this a little bit yesterday when I did a brief extra innings episode recapping the series, but more talking about what we just went over here. There's this now weird, not gaslighting, I don't think that's the right word, but shame on Twins fans for being mad at owners when you have a really, really good baseball team. And this is a good baseball team. I don't think anyone's denying that this is a good baseball team. It is good. They're X amount over 500. They have a very good chance of making the playoffs. They're in a better spot last year than they were this year at this time. Royce Lewis is back. Carlos Correa's knocking the door, coming back. Vibes around just the team itself, the 26-man roster, pretty good. But also, we have gone to this square dance 15 times over the last 20 years where you do have a pretty good team. It probably is going to make the playoffs. And you need another piece to really push you over the top so you can be with the prom queen of Baltimore and whatnot, and be in the dance of one of the big contenders. And instead, you're just settling, oh, well, you have a good team, you should appreciate it. No, dude, full stop on that. And for us not to discuss what the ownership is maybe hampering and limiting what the Twins can do at the deadline for a rhetoric and for a conversation that has always existed with the Pohlad family, that meter is all the way at 11 right now. So yes, we do need to talk about it. Yes, they deserve criticism because this is a good team that needs another piece. So the fact that we shouldn't be talking about it, we should just be focusing on the 26-man roster, full stop on that. I hate that.
I agree completely. In fact, I would like to, for a second, not because they're not being screwed potentially, and I can certainly talk about that. I'd like to sort of put the fans on the shelf. I'd like to talk about the clubhouse. Because, fans can be fickle, and if fans are pissed off, they just won't watch. Look, the Twins attendance is down. Thank God for Brewers and Phillies fans, because it would be down more. But I mean, Twins fans are speaking with their pocketbooks, with their cash. The Twins attendance, which I think they were hoping would go to 2 million, is pacing behind last year. But I want to talk about the clubhouse and the players, because to me, this is where it gets to be very intriguing. The Twins got off to a lousy start, and we all piled on, rightfully so. They got off to a 9-13 start. Do you know since then they are 49-33? They're in contention for the AL Central title. They are in contention for a potential, if they can win that, bye in the first round. Like, these players as a group have done, and Baldelli too. They've done about everything that you could possibly ask after a poor start to pull themselves back up. And by the way, not only win series, but do what we all asked, which is, can you win series against good teams? I don't care if the Phillies are struggling. You won 2 of 3 from the best team in baseball.
Well, they're struggling in part because the Twins beat them 2 out of 3.
Yeah, but
the
I mean,
Twins
you can't,
are good.
Exactly, because you can't now say, well, they were struggling. Exactly right. But to me, what type of message does this send to the team, which clearly needs a starting pitcher, and in a perfect world, a left-handed reliever out of the bullpen? What type of message does this send if you are going to squash any trades, including for rentals, it sounds like, because you can't match up salaries? And the one thing I will say that I continue to see thrown out, and just stop with it, is, well, what if they include Kepler? He's a corner outfielder in the last year of his contract. It's going to cost you a better if you insist that Max Kepler has to be thrown into a trade. If I'm trading with you, I want a better prospect then. I'm not just going to take him. I'm not saying he's bad, but this notion that like, oh, there's value there. We're giving you Kepler. That is the old rotisserie baseball league trade with your drunk friend. It's ridiculous. But I want to talk about management and really not baseball ops, ownership, alienating a clubhouse that is basically screaming for help and, in my opinion, deserves help.
Yeah, it is worth noting that, I mean, Carlos Correa is the figurehead of this baseball team, and he, on the record, it's funny, like, I came back to the clubhouse for the first time in, like, 5 years, and the first media scrum, and Declan was there, Doogie was there. The first media scrum I was a part of in that clubhouse in 5 years is Carlos Correa on the record saying, yeah, I'm pushing the team to trade for pitching.
Exactly.
And other players kind of feel it too, and they know that this team can hit when it's healthy, but they're just like a couple arms away. It's like when you look at the facts of the case, first of all, we are still a day and a half away from anything actually happening or not. So I want to be a little careful savaging the organization before the actual trade deadline hits, because like they could make a move. Other teams are doing things in the last couple days. We will know more at 5:00 p.m. Central Time on Tuesday what they actually have planned or don't. Mm-hmm. But to this point, we know these two things as facts. The Twins had their most successful season in 20 years last year, and the first thing that happens a month afterwards is they announce through The Athletic or whatever on background, we have to cut payroll. So, hey, congratulations, fans. It was a super fun ride. Thank you for populating Target Field. Most successful season in terms of advancing in the playoffs in 20 years, but we are cutting payroll by about 20%, 18 to 20%. And the second fact is the Twins are currently in a position to make a run. The American League there's not like a dominant force at the top here. The Orioles are good. The Yankees have a dangerous lineup when they're healthy. But there's not like this league is wide open for someone to step in if you have the horses going into the playoffs. And yet, according to credible reports, ownership doesn't want to take on money. I understand the local TV conundrum. It's affecting a bunch of teams across baseball. But if there was ever a time to just take a short-term financial hit in the second half of the season, this would be the time. People are ready to jump on board and support this thing. People will flock to the ballpark for a playoff stretch run. I think that's my reading on the temperature in the room. Obviously, we don't have any official data that says if you spend $5 million prorated the rest of the year, you're going to get it back this much ROI on ticket sales. You can't prove it. But I don't think, Blake Snell is the most expensive guy out there. There's a report this morning that the Orioles are interested in trading for Blake Snell, and that would be a game changer for them. Yeah. Let's take him off the table. A lot of the names that we've discussed, the names that are floating out there, the latest one I'm just looking on MLB trade rumors right now. And Jim Bowden reporting, according to sources, the Orioles, Yankees, Red Sox, and Royals, who just landed, the Royals just traded for Lorenzen, right? Mm-hmm. Those four teams are in the mix to acquire Tanner Scott from the Marlins. All-star closer, lefty reliever. He would be a perfect fit in this bullpen. Give you another lights-out late-inning arm, right? And you got four other teams in the mix, including the Royals, who are you're trying to fend off in your own division. He has less than $2 million remaining on his contract. Like, to me, it's one thing if you're going to add $20 million extra dollars. Okay, all right, I get it.
Right.
But, dude, Nathan Eovaldi, $5 million left prorated this year. Jack Flaherty, $5 million left. You're already spending $127 million on this year's payroll. Adding 20, conversation. Adding 2, adding 3, I would be... if that's a holdup financially, then I have, I guess, bigger questions about, is there like a financial problem with the company, the family that can't sustain a few $1 million for a couple arms down the stretch? So I almost don't believe that that's true. But if it's Blake Snell, okay. But if it's Tanner Scott for $2 million, that's a baseball trade prospect conversation, not a financial conversation, right?
But we've seen it 3 places nationally. Bobby Nightingale, son of Bob, had it in the Star Tribune last week. At some point in time, are all of these people wrong, or are the Twins going to say, you know what, this is embarrassing? Like, and I'm sure that Falvey wants to make a move. Like, I don't think this has anything to do to what you're talking about financially with baseball ops. The amazing thing about this is if they don't do this, so like if they just stand pat and it comes out, hey, we couldn't afford it. This season, for as well as the team has played, at least since its rough start, it is the hat trick of public relations disasters. One, you had that great team, or the really good team that finally won a playoff game for the first time in 18 years, and you immediately announce we have to chop payroll because of our TV conundrum, okay? Then, on May 1st, you disappear from the biggest cable system, and I don't care if it's your fault or not. You're going to take hits.
Well, yeah, because you agreed to a deal with a company
Exactly.
that had its biggest connector to the public,
Exactly,
a contract up on May 1st. Like,
and here's the double whammy on that story is they're still paying you a rights fee. Like, you went back in part because they basically said we cannot pay you 54 mil, but we will pay you something 42. I don't know. So and then you're going to follow that up when your attendance is down and you're good with, sorry, we couldn't make a trade. Like, if you want that ballpark in the midst of what is going to be some type of race, I mean, I think they're probably going to make the playoffs, if nothing else, as a wild card. If you want that ballpark to feel sort of hopeless, and the team, and, you know, I mean, I what we don't process here is how do players who are, it's not like don't make any trades. This is one where I think you look around, if you are Correa, if you are a contributor, right? And you're like, oh my God, if we have a starting pitcher, we've got a shot. And so, like, the team and the fans, I think, have every right, if they don't make a trade, to say this entire thing has been, from the top, a disaster.
so, and to that point, like, this is why I would rather hear, whether it's through these national reports that are coming out, hey, the Twins love their team. They need a couple guys to come back healthy. They love Bailey Ober and how great he's been as a starter now. Another lights out performance yesterday. Simeon Woods Richardson has been a huge surprise, and he's coming into his own as this once former top 100 overall prospect. And they think Pablo Lopez is going to be fine. They actually love their rotation going into the playoffs. Just have to sort of let this thing play out. And with that, Chris Paddock's going to be moved to the bullpen at some point, and they feel like they don't have to give up top prospects to compete in the American League, which we could debate all of that.
Right.
I'd rather hear, like, I'm more open to that conversation than, Tanner Scott and Kyle Finnegan, two really good closers on the market, ready to be traded for, that cost less than $2 million for the rest of the season. Right. That the price tag on those guys financially is a non-negotiable. If the Twins came out and said, you know what, the going prospect price for Tanner Scott for like 2 months of a rental is going to be 2 top 15 prospects, and quite frankly, we just don't think it's worth it because we don't think it moves the needle from a baseball perspective. Let's debate that. Let's not debate whether we can add $2 million to an already $127 million payroll. Like, that's where the gap in logic for me doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And I mean, that Correa was on the record saying we need help. I talked to another player that said we need literal help, and that he was pissed that they didn't do anything at the deadline last season to kind of bolster their team. That was a good team, to Judd's point, that snapped a playoff streak, that had 2 horses at the top of their rotation. That part I think is curious, because I think there is even a delicate dance where maybe the manager in Rocco, who kind of I think did this a little bit, said, he's been so impressed with the guys in that room, and they deserve way more credit for digging themselves out of the hole and putting themselves in contention. And then also, it's not even that, it's acknowledging that this team needs help and that teammates are around and knowing like, hey, we're weak in this department. It's not a knock on an individual player. It's not a knock on the collection in this room. It's just a realization that we need another piece. So if no move happens, I am very curious on the response from those leaders, from those types of players, because this Twins team is pretty good, and it is a pretty tight-knit group. I like what they've mostly done this season from a clubhouse perspective. They're a likable group, but they do need another piece to be in the dance with Baltimore. Like, Baltimore, in my opinion, is the best team in the American League, and there's a gap. There's a huge gap between Baltimore and the second-best team in Cleveland, or whoever you want to list it as, in the American League. But it's baseball, and the Texas Rangers won the World Series last year sneaking in. So weird things can happen too. But they need another piece to really solidify themselves with the top dogs in the American League.
And Carlos Correa doesn't have a list if he loves the entire rotation. Like if he's convinced, man, this is lights out, no question about it. Like this is all in some ways, if you think about how this is all going down right now, it's all very calculated. So Correa doesn't tell you guys that he has a list unless he wants it out there publicly, right? Which is essentially what Falvey has joked about previously, which is he does see himself as, if nothing else, an extension of the baseball ops department. The other thing is, when you think about the amount of people to report this, is the call coming from inside the house to try to, I don't know, embarrass is probably too strong, but try to shove the poll ads to get some pressure. Because, like, Passan gets it. Feinsand gets it. The Star Tribune gets it. Bob Nightingale for that notes column, which I love on Sundays, gets it. Like, if it was an eight...
I think the Athletic also had something too, right? Yeah.
I'm just thinking of if the agent, if it's like an agent, I mean, could it be Boris through Correa, perhaps? But could it also be someone from the Twins baseball ops department trying to, just as a Hail Mary pass, get the poll ads to say, okay, you know what? We'll take on the type of salary fill that you were just talking about, which would seem entirely reasonable.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, again, salary is more of an off-season winter discussion.
Yeah.
When you're talking about free agents that might cost $100 million over 5 years or something. Salary should be less of a discussion when you're talking about rent-a-pitchers from July 31st until the playoffs. Where, like, no one's asking for $100 million number 2 starter here.
Right.
They're asking for, like, Jack Flaherty's $5 million remaining on his $15 million contract that another team has already paid 2/3 of.
And Bobby Nightingale wrote about the Star Tribune over the weekend. Like, they're not just worried about their books right now. Like, they're worried about their payroll in 2025.
And that makes sense because they don't know where the TV money's coming from in 2025.
Yeah, I mean,
but guess what? Jack Flaherty's not under contract in 2025.
Yeah, he won't be back. Exactly.
Tanner Scott's not under contract in 2025.
Yes, like that. That's what's weird. Is are they? I guess the question is, are they bleeding financially so badly that they can't take on a salary for the remainder of the season, and then that player is gone? Like, this is a very interesting and sort of weird and almost, in some ways, un-Twins-like thing. I mean, they have made, they've been some bad trades, but they have, if you go back at the deadline with Falvey running the baseball operations department, have made trades.
Well,
so, like, if you're now saying, Uncle, we can't do a thing, even for the Twins, and for, like, this is where the people that say cheap poll ads are going to get a ton of ammunition.
Well, I to your point about historically they have made some trades. I did a deep dive on that yesterday while I was watching the Olympic quad box on the Gold Zone channel, which life changer, by the way. Well, I had Twins baseball on one screen and then the Olympic, the Gold Zone. It was Siciliano for a while yesterday and then Scott Hansen.
Scott Hansen.
So I want to present something to you and help explain another reason why fans get so frustrated in moments like this. But maybe you're a frustrated or a happy fan, whatever you are, and you're looking for a place to stay near the ballpark, Element Hotel is a great spot, Dex.
Yeah, we got the Guards are coming to town here in a week. We got the White Sox this coming weekend. The Guardians are going to be here. The Royals. Going to be some AL Central showdowns coming up at Target Field. Plus the Bravos, the Braves, coming to town too later next month as well. So if you're an out-of-town baseball fan, we've been seeing a lot of out-of-town guests kind of stack the field at Target Field. Why don't you go stay at the Element Hotel, okay? It's got free Wi-Fi. It's a great atmosphere. It's located just steps away from Target Field. So if you'd like to stay there, you can get a little 15% off by going to scorenorth.com/element. scorenorth.com/element for 15% off your room.
So I went through, just out of curiosity, to try and answer the question or the comment that Judd just made, which is, how often have they, I've got my own like revisionist history, but factually, how often has this franchise made an aggressive needle-moving trade at the deadline or like within a month before the deadline for a team that's contending for the playoffs. And if you go back when they came out of the like the 90s doldrums, the contraction Twins, they popped up in 2001. And since 2001, they've been pretty regularly on the verge of being a really good team, a lot more often than not. So for like 25 years, the Twins have been a really good team at the trade deadline. By my count, 16 times in 23 seasons, not counting this season. So 2021 through 2023, 16 times they either made the playoffs or were in the hunt at the trade deadline, like within a handful of games of the division or 8-10 games above 500 in a wild card hunt. So from 2001 through 2010, every year, first 10 years of the decade, they were in contention at the deadline. 2015, they popped up, were in contention at the deadline. 17 in contention. 19, 20, which was the weird COVID year. And then 22, they were in contention, actually made a couple prominent trades. And then last year, they were also in contention. So if my count is right, that's 16 times in 23 years in contention at the trade deadline. Of those 16 trade deadlines, in 5 of the years, they made no major league level trade at all whatsoever. In another 5 of the years, I would say they made needle-moving trades. And then the other 6 years was a hodgepodge of like half-hearted things. Brett Boone, the Sam Dyson, Sergio Romo trades, which was like, okay, we're going to like add a 6th inning reliever to the greatest home run hitting team in baseball history, and then a guy who was injured. Mm-hmm. And then there's the Jaime Garcia thing where they traded for him.
Well, that was
he made one start, and then they lost some games that week, and then they sold off, including him.
Yeah.
So again, by my count, correct me if you think I'm wrong on this, since 2001, 16 times they have entered the trade deadline window as a playoff contender or better. Mm-hmm. And I count only 5 needle-moving trade deadlines. Shannon Stewart in 2003, which was a great trade. MVP votes.
Right.
One of the most underrated players of that 5-year period in baseball. Mm-hmm. 2001, they added Todd Jones and Rick Reed, which was, I know you're kind of laughing, but like Rick Reed, was
good,
a rock-solid starter, all-star with the Mets, World Series rotation guy 2 years earlier. Todd Jones led the league in saves the previous year and was top 5 in Cy Young voting. So those guys were like actual. That was a great trade deadline. They wound up not making the playoffs. 2009, Orlando Cabrera, Carl Pavano, John Roush. John Roush was a really good late inning reliever. Orlando Cabrera helped spark that thing. They went like 16-3 to make the game 163. 2010, this is where it gets a little borderline. 2010, they traded for Matt Capps and Brian Fuentes. Capps was really good, but they wound up not really needing him to A, win the division, and B, they didn't even use him in that sweep against the Yankees, so it kind of fell flat. And then on paper, I'm going to say that the 2022 trade deadline was needle moving, and it just didn't work. Like Jorge Lopez, Michael Fulmer, and Tyler Mahle. That was an aggressive deadline.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Mahle was hurt.
Yeah.
Lopez fell apart, and Fulmer was fine, but the concept of the trade deadline made sense. But I think that's kind of it. And I think fans have sensed that for like a quarter of a century that, man, this team is good a lot more often than it's not at the deadline. And only a handful of times have they really said, you know what, let's do this. Let's make a bold play with prospects, maybe even take on some big salary in the second half of the season, right? And so like this piles up over 2.5 decades and people get frustrated this time of year.
But if it's one thing if we think that, back in the day, Terry Ryan didn't want to give up his prospects, right? Or this is the first time that I recall where it's not just the fans screaming, literally the media is telling you they can't afford it. Like that's what really throws me. And again, I think this discussion right now, a day before the deadline, is warranted because when you see this many reports, it's a pretty frightening thing. I mean, this team, I think we all can say this team deserves it. This team deserves help. The Jaime Garcia thing, if you go back, was a very weird team. They were falling apart. I think Molly was still there.
Yep.
They were falling apart. They got him some help. They struggled, but that to me was a very borderline. I don't know. And there's a ton of teams in wildcard contention now that are exactly that, which is what are we really? I think I can answer what these Twins are. And I'm being told flat out, they just can't afford it.
Yeah.
Like the cheap Pohlad thing gets pushed back against by us at times because it's a fan thing. No one's ever come out, I don't recall, multiple reports like this. So this is what's disturbing is we're literally not being told this is a prospect problem. This is a baseball problem. This sounds to me like it has nothing to do with Falvey.
Yeah.
This sounds like it has everything to do with a thumb on him from up top. And I just think the trickle down of that is a incredibly, in what's been a disaster of a PR year, I think it just adds fuel to the fire of why people are sort of like, okay, then if that's the case, then I'm going to go watch training camp.
I would think too, and they might come back. Like this would be really interesting if you could pull the curtain back fully. Because when they signed Correa the first time around, back 3 years ago,
Yep,
it did not move the needle for ticket sales. He was the star shortstop, this guy who's been great in the postseason. He's a household name, and it did not move the needle. And I wonder if they have some information or research, because I can sit here all day and say, hey, if you go take on like 5 or 10, let's call it like $5 million, go get Tanner Scott, and then go get go get Flaherty. You're going to have to trade some prospects, but you'd probably take on $5 to $7 million. Maybe you can get someone to pick up some of the cash. Take on $5 million and give up prospects to get Jack Flaherty, resurgent season, and Tanner Scott, lefty lights out reliever, and roll the ball out in October and see what happens. Does that not come back at you? Excitement, rejuvenation. We are feeding this team that we think can win the championship. Does that not put some butts in the seats to at least cancel it out? Does it not get you, 4 or 5 extra thousand fans per game, concessions? Somebody would have to do the P&L report on that. But I don't know. I almost feel like investing a few $1 million in the second half could be very fruitful financially for the Twins. So I'm kind of with Judd. On one hand, there's people screaming, why are you guys shocked that they're being cheap? And it's like, well, they literally at every step the last few years have they signed Carlos Correa when other teams were scared. They went out and gave Josh Donaldson a bad contract a few years ago. They've been splashier the last 5 years than they've been. Why now is this a discussion? And I get it, the TV deal, totally. But that to me is more of a 2025 and beyond thing because you don't know where that money's coming from. Yeah. That's not an August and September thing, I don't think. But
and you're getting a check. Here's my question: if the TV problem, while you're getting a rights check, and I know it's less, but it's still a check. If it's become this big of deal, there's a chance next year MLB is going to produce Twins games and they're going to stream, and it's going to be awesome as far as the ability to have a viewing experience. But there's going to be even less coming in. And to echo what you're saying, okay, let's say that in 2025 you're going to be streamed, blackouts are done, right? And so your product can be in front of eyeballs, young and old now. Are you really going to say, yeah, that's great, except we're not spending any more now? Yeah. We cut our payroll by another 10 mil. Now we're down to, from 30 mil down to in 2 years, 40 mil down.
I think, and this is where, again, they can make the playoffs without adding anything. They'll be a wild card team if they do nothing, unless injuries are a huge problem in the last 2 months. But it's how much do you crave something beyond getting into the playoffs and maybe making some noise?
Right.
Do we think that this team, as constructed, can take advantage of a pretty wide open American League? I think we all agree, the pitching's not quite where it needs to be. So if it only costs a few $1 million to get the pitching to a point where you think it can compete with the Orioles and that Yankees lineup, if it is full strength down the stretch, isn't that worth it? Isn't that worth it? I guess we'll find out in the next couple of days.
And that's not us. That's Carlos Correa.
Yeah.
That's
yep.
What.
So we'll see. Hey, they have a day and a half. They have a day and a half to add something to a really good baseball team. The Royals did something.
Do something.
Other teams are active right now. Anything else in closing here on this State of the Twins Monday that you guys want to touch on? I know we kind of hit on like Bailey Ober and Simeon Woods Richardson. We can probably talk about those guys more later in the week too. Bailey Ober's been ridiculous.
Yeah. I would say Bailey Ober is your game one starter right now.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I'm going to drop that
show.
take. Just going to
Yeah.
drop
That sounds like
that
a
take.
show to me.
I think that's a show. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a headline because that's good. That's really good.
You should
And-
throw that at Plouffe tomorrow to start the show and see what
Oh, I like it.
we should do that tomorrow.
It's been great.
I mean, you take away that first start of the season, and
Take away the 2 starts against the Royals. The numbers are insane.
I'll leave the second one in because it's in the middle of the season. He's going to have some bad start. Like the first start's like it's March, it's cold, it's a breakfast ball. Give him a breakfast ball for that first
I
one.
love that term.
So yeah, okay. Dex should throw that one at Plouffe tomorrow
All right.
to start the show. All right, that was
Therapeutic.
preemptively therapeutic.
Now do something.
Come on, Twins.
Anything.
People want to support. People want to fill that ballpark. But as other teams are making moves around the American League, it's just a bad look to not do something. So do something.
I also was told yesterday that basically it sounds like the word has been to the Bally's folks for 2 weeks. The Comcast thing is done, and that they don't know why it's not back. But hopefully, the Twins resurface on Bally Sports North on Comcast this week.
Okay.
Not promising it, but it
Could
sounds
happen
like
this
it's
week.
done.
Okay. All right, we'll see. So SKOR North Twins Show. If you haven't already, click that subscribe button on the new SKOR North Twins Show YouTube channel, and we'll see you for a Trevor Plouffe Tuesday tomorrow. Trade deadline Tuesday. Park Tavern, 4 o'clock tomorrow, too.